So while people are thinking of questions, from the audience as well, let me just note that Neil is going to be difficult to deal with because he, wants to have some booze for this panel, but it didn't happen, so he's going to be in a bad mood. We'll cope with that. But let me begin by asking, the average lifespan of a consortium like IMTC is about 7 years. So why do you think IMTC has endured? And are you surprised that it got to 20? And that's a question to each one of you.
Howdy. Well, we've survived because I was only president for 5 years. So yeah, there was a good time, time to make changes. And, most consortium are started for marketing reasons, right? And so markets change and consortiums come and go. But we could have been having this conversation, this forum 20 years ago. You just changed the names around a little bit. But, we're still trying to make this stuff work together. And, codecs are better, but intellectual property is still an issue, interoperability, what platforms keep morphing, and each new platform is the one that's going to save the world for a while. And then it hits its warts. So the interoperability testing that we started, and we're lucky enough to have Greg run for all that time, is really what provided real value to our companies, and it still does. You want to say anything?
Only if you pass the baton. Yeah, I would echo everything you said as well, and I think also we've been, as an organization, very open-minded as it relates to having other organizations merge into the message and morphing that original interop message to mean much broader and bigger things than the original intent of T120 and 320. So we've been very successful there, and I think the outcome of all of the super ops are a foundation on which we built today's organization.
Well, so Deepak, this was an easy question. Thank you very much for the. Basically, what we are doing here, or we have been doing here, it is I would see it as a supplementary to SDO, so the standardization work. So basically to help setting requirements, then the interop testing, and so on. And they are always a generation of standards. And we have went through a lot of generation of standard. And as also standardization never runs out, usually. Yeah? So we have been keeping on new generation of standard, also new type of topic. At the very beginning, we had the different wireline multimedia system, then also the T120, and so on. And then around 2000, then we moved also to the mobile area. And now we are talking here about web-based video applications. So it is something that it is always changing, improving, and that's the reason why, in my opinion, you will be here even after 50 years. Yeah? There will be always something.
So there is difficult to add something to what these guys already said. I think that the idea is that, sorry, we've been very adaptable and always looking for the next thing. We move as technology moves. We really proactively looking at what are the other technologies where we can make an impact, where we can help our members to advance, change, improve, and so on. So that's part of like survivability. And we exist. We as long as we bring value, we exist. So that's the important thing.
And of all the different technologies that IMTC's worked on, again, question to each one of you, Which one do you think has had the most impact? I'll start with you, Anatoly.
The least impact?
Most.
Most impact.
You know, T120, H320, 323, IMS, 324M, other stuff.
That's a very difficult question.
Good.
There are three. I can't identify one.
Okay.
There are three, and so it's H223, it's packet switch streaming, and it's 3G 324M. I would say in three of those we made the most impact out of the three. So packet switch streaming and H223 are still actively in use today. So that's like one of the factors for me to define it. But 3G 324M had its own lifespan. It was useful and needed, and it was used as it delivered practical service, practical revenues and everything. So then it now substituted with all the LTE technologies, and so it's not here. But so let's say packet switch streaming and H223 has still been used and still been
Right.
tested and so on.
So Deepak, thank you very much. That was also an easy question. So for me, actually, it was presented by Greg Meyer from Intel. The first two interoperability testing topics, so the T120 and the H320, those were, in my opinion, really the pioneering effort. So the way how, I mean, he has explained it, and then everybody also copied it. So IMTC is not the one, but it is a model of many, many forums who are doing this. And actually, it was even copied by Etsy. I mean, Etsy copied what we did with the interoperability testing and so on. But it was really invented here by my friend here on the left, and then also by Greg. Yeah. So it was, in my opinion, that was the best and most interesting one.
Matt?
Yeah, I would agree. 320 and T120 were the foundations on which the organization was built, and all of the downstream interop events that occurred afterwards were, follow on and easily replicated. I also think the SIP parity group that we launched several years ago helped reinvigorate the organization and spawn the current iteratives of earlier times.
Well, I'd like to completely disagree with all of you, but I can't. I mean, we're not going to get any controversy if you keep these nice, softball questions. But, I kind of second everybody. And the key thing was that we were testing the whole ecosystem together, right? And so this wasn't individual product to individual product. It was the, entire environment, because people, video conferencing had been, around 20 years by the time we got around to starting testing this stuff, and you still couldn't get A to talk to B, much less A to talk to B using MCU, which I guess are going to die now, I heard today. No, no, but they'll have transcoders, and sometimes they'll transcode multiple images into one. Virtually. Yeah, virtually. Okay. Thanks.
So on the flip side of that then, are there any opportunities, technologies that IMTC missed or didn't capitalize on fully? Are there things that IMTC should have done that it didn't do or didn't do well enough?
Well, there are lots of things that we could have done, and
Right.
Certainly, personally, I think it was good that we didn't wade into, essentially all of the voice over IP, replacing switch telephone and all of that stuff, right? Because we didn't have this, we would have had to had a much huger scale, and it was a completely different political environment, even though a lot of the players were the same players we were working with.
Well, During that same period, you grew an organization of your own that had 25 different technology groups, and you could have put them all inside the IMTC when we would be 400 and, how many companies did you mention? 4,000. 4,000 companies large, but you didn't. So.
So that's my problem.
Yeah, that is, actually. You were our first secretary, so. But I think if we missed an opportunity, it wasn't a bad thing. It kept the focus of the organization on what we were, intent on doing, and that was creating interoperability between all the platforms from all of the member companies, and doing that successfully. And had we brought in divergent activities, it would have potentially changed the look and feel of the organization and potentially its success.
Well, so this is really difficult. Basically, the IMTC vision on multimedia, it was always very great, absolutely, and all over the time. We really believed from the very beginning that multimedia communication will fly one day. But I have to be a little bit also critical. If I look all these different bits and pieces that we have done, that the market penetration of many of the components, it was actually not that great. So we have occupied niches. So even the famous 120, I mean, in my eyes, it was also a sort of niche. And if I look around today, for instance, with the not standardized applications, which are in some areas are dominating, I don't know, Skype, yeah, a Hangout, and so on. And if I talk to my friends, and then they are telling me that they are going to Skype now, so it is actually a new word has been created, then the vision, it was ours, but some of the implementations were not ours. And that's a pity.
Well, that's the life in open standards, right? That's the life in the open standards. So you can't, that's closed versus open. So we can't create a Skype interoperability consortium. They do it on their own. So I'm not sure. I don't have an answer on what kind of train did we miss? Was there technology? To me, it's very simple. In the end of the day, I always say one and the same thing. We're a member-driven organization. If members come and say, we want to do activity X, then our job is to support it because we have a group of people who is interested in that type of activity. So we can't enforce anything, and even though we have, there was a period of time when we had a CTO position in IMTC. Right now we reinvigorated our technical steering committee chair who is supposed to look at the new technologies. But nevertheless, we can communicate as a leadership of the organization. We can communicate back to the members and say, how about X, Y, and Z? And if everybody say, no, we don't care about X, Y, and the Z is total BS, there is nothing we can do about it.
Are there any questions from the audience? I mean, I've got a bunch here, but...
Why, yes, there is.
Oh, well, there we go then.
Okay, so the SIP, when SIP was first starting out, it sort of exposed a part about IMTC that a flaw in the way we look at things, because SIP we adopted it very slowly, right? We tried, but there were a lot of members who were opposed to it because it was a competing standard, right? So as a consortium that's driven by members, we're in this complex scenario where, that members are trying to oppose SIP, and yet SIP is a standard and needs to be adopted for the organization, for the better, for the industry. So how does IMTC as presidents, how do we overcome that?
Well, I think back when the SIP 323 battle was raging, we were more focused on ITU-based activities. I think over the last 4 or 5 years, 6, maybe 7, since Anatoly's been president, we've kind of quickly adopted new technologies. SVC was one that comes to mind right away. We adopted and put activity around the SVC protocol that several member companies put forward as a proposal, work proposal. And we are also quickly adopting WebRTC. I think in that period of time, there were 2 distinct organizations. The ITU and the IETF nothing worked together. So the SIP parity activity tried to rectify that and did within this organization. That activity was kicked off to make our SIP video implementations equal in feature, function, and capability to the H323 implementation, and started that adaptation for future protocols like SVC and WebRTC.
Well, so if I remember correctly, which maybe it is not the case, so at the beginning when we had this standardization fight, so which was really H323 versus SIP, then also we had at that point in time a parallel forum. I don't know, it was called SIP forum or whatever. So they have taken over the SIP testing, and then of course it was rather difficult also because then we had already in that space already a competitor to bring in the SIP testing also into IMTC, but what we did, and even earlier than when Anatoly took it over, but it was always a smaller part, if I remember, maybe 1 or 2 or whatever. So this had some historical reasons.
Yeah, there were a few member companies that did implement SIP, and they brought them to the super ops and stuff. I guess the question is, I mean, part of the problem is the IETF process is so much different. It takes a long time to quote. There's not like as formal a process as the ITU has, right? So to actually get to a standard, a definition of what the standard is, takes a long time. Yet it's during that time that we should be working with those, and how do you identify the protocols that we should be working with in say the ITF that that's going to compete with member companies, and you see the dilemma, right?
Well, I'm gonna sound a little redundant, but again, the concept of being member driven that's what we have to operate from. So I perfectly remember those SIP days. We could never find a good chair for the SIP activity group who would lead people on one side, right? At the same time, if you look at our majority of our membership, we were always a video conferencing consortium. The video always, even though in the heydays we had probably 80 VoIP gateway vendors out of the 140, right? Yeah, something like that. Yeah, every second company was building a VoIP gateway. But H223 was prevalent technology always in the mind of everyone as a technology for video conferencing. And in those days, we could not get our members to move, to actually start looking at SIP actively. And if you think about it, when Matt restarted this activity in 2008, the SIP as a technology was more or less ready to be taken into the video. And that's what we did. Because it's a complex matter, but you address needs of your members. So I don't think you can the only thing you can do, you can be proactive and adaptive. You're willing to look at the new technologies, willing to start things quickly, and that's what we're doing right now. And I think that's the key driving factor going forward. But you can't avoid that, because sometimes there's certain things like technology not being ready, it might not be even clearly understood at that time that, this is SIP kind of universal technology, but no, it's not really ready it took it 5 years to get to the stage where it can be used for video conferencing, and then we move it forward.
Neil?
One of the things we have to remember is IMTC is also and has been a politically astute institution, right? So the standards and environment of ISO, ITU, and is a very formalized process, and the IETF was and still is chaos. So if we had offered all the testing facilities, everything, thrown millions of dollars at it, they wouldn't have trusted us to touch anything, right? I mean, that's just the way it was. ITU was the devil. ATM was, how the devil ate everybody, and on and on and on and on. So it was irreconcilable from an organizational standpoint. I don't think we could have done it if we had really wanted to do it.
Is that different today then?
Well, today, the core technologies, if you will, the codecs, right, are the same, more or less. And, so the arguments are still around platforms and protocols and, which protocol is best for this or that. And we get innovative companies like Skype, whose innovation was not the core technology. It was actually getting something to run well in any PC on any network, right? So that you could actually have a phone conversation through the whole crappy mess that we all have to deal with every day. And there's a reason why they're not here, because that's their intellectual value. So again, just trying not to bite off more than we can chew, and strategically pick the things that are important and are in somewhat green space.
So in that vein then, IMTC once changed its name. The T became teleconferencing, from teleconferencing to telecommunications. So should we now change the name to Internet and Mobile Telecommunications Consortium?
No,
Why?
because you'd be a new consortium. I mean, at that, the name doesn't make any difference. Half of the members probably don't know what the name actually stands for. I mean, it's true, right? Well, we changed it from teleconferencing to telecommunications because that's what most of the members thought it was, even though it wasn't, right? So, I don't think that it's like AT&T. Nobody cares that one of those T's was telegraph. So that it really doesn't make any difference. IMTC is the brand, not the full name of the organization.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think a name change does anything for the delivery of valuable content and efforts by the members to get products to interwork. In fact, I would argue, take the definition of the brand off the website altogether.
But I also agree, actually, so in ECMA we did that. So ECMA is standing as ECMA, as a label, as a trademark. So you might do the same thing also with IMTC, but don't destroy the trademark.
In full agreement. We can move on.
Nothing to say.
They
Okay.
already said everything.
Okay. So if we're not going to change the name from a focus perspective, where should the focus be going forward?
where should the focus be going forward? Well, the focus is on, so I always, when I try to explain in a few short sentences, what do we do? The IMTC is about making multimedia over IP technologies interoperable. So I don't think you can define this focus any, well, no, let me take it back. Of course, the focus can be redefined, but I think if we say in IP multimedia communications and we make all those technologies interoperable, that pretty much covers the realm of where we are today and where we're going, whatever is happening ahead of us, voice over LTE or RCS or WebRTC or any of the relevant technologies, they all in the same realm. So this is slight adjustment of the focus. But, and then there can be, on one side it's some of the broad definition, but I think the precision is there to say that these are, again, that we have the IP as a foundation, and then we have a whole bunch of technologies which deliver new services, new applications, new service on top of that, and that's our focus.
I think the IMTC, going forward, should really focus on, the internet communication technologies that are out there today. Really trying to drive the same things historically we've driven as an organization, interworking between multiple disparate islands of technologies, and try to drive those to an interworking, flexible, federated cloud and edge suite of devices that work interchangeably with any other cloud or federation of services that are out there.
Yeah, going back to the more of the system aspect, right, is, we still have very dirty networks. We have networks